Our lead story today is UFC President Dana White detailed to Rob Gronkowski on the UFC telecast this weekend that he was brokering a deal to get Brady and Gronk to the Raiders. And at the last second, Gruden blew it up and said, no, I'm not interested. Brady did go on later on the LeBron James The Shop, that production show. And Brady was sort of dog cussing a quarterback and a team about that they, in the end, chose to be loyal with their guy. We didn't know who their guy was. I thought it was Mitch Trubisky or something. I don't even remember who I thought it was. It was Derek Carr. So Gruden, to his credit, publicly said, I support Derek Carr, and according to this story, still supported Derek Carr, who's great, I think. All right, Albert Breer is joining us. Monday morning quarterback covering the league for 15 years, 17 actually. So first of all, what did you make of the Dana story? I never bought the rumor. I thought, my takeaway was they're rebuilding, the defense is bad, the O-line is shaky. Were you shocked at all when you heard Dana White say this?
No, because the Raiders have been one team that had sort of been in the mix. And I think I would tier it for you, Colin. Like at the very end, it really was the Buccaneers and the Chargers. But, if you wound back a couple weeks, you had teams that had sort of, put their foot in the water. The Raiders, the Bears, the Colts. And the Raiders were a team that had been talked about at the time. I think more than anything else, it sort of signifies how complicated it was. And look, I think, you can look back at it in retrospect and think, why wouldn't anyone have done what the Buccaneers did? But, at that point, obviously the season hadn't ended great in New England. And there were some teams that looked at his age and said, do we really want to blow up what we've been building here for a few years to accommodate everything that would come with getting Tom Brady? And the Bucs, to their credit, were willing to do that. They changed the way that they wrote contracts. They changed the way that they approached free agency, the draft, trades, all of that to build on his timeline. And so I think as much as anything else, it sort of signifies how complicated acquiring Tom Brady was at the time, where it wasn't just about acquiring Brady, it was about acquiring everything that came with him. And I think that that's where John Gruden and the Raiders had some pause.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Joe Burrow, I'm interested this year because we were just talking during the break. Baltimore gets some breaks in their scheduling. It's one of the easier schedules, and they're also healthier than they were this time last year. I think I like Cincinnati to win the division, but Burrow has had that is it appendectomy, or he's had a little bit of a physical setback. Yep. You tell me where you are with Joe Burrow and his return.
I think he's going to be fine. I mean, we forget, last year he was coming off an ACL, and the appendectomy was a little more serious than he let on in the beginning, which, obviously has been revealed now. But this guy was a borderline MVP candidate last year and led a renaissance at Cincinnati, despite the fact that he was coming off of an injury where a lot of people aren't very good their first year back.
Right.
So I'm putting Burrow in that category now, and maybe this is a little early, but I'm putting Burrow in that category now where I think as long as he's on the team, baseline, you have a winning record.
Yeah.
And then if you're really good around him, you can be much better than that.
Yeah.
And so I'd expect the Bengals, so long as Joe Burrow is healthy, to contend and to be in the mix to win the AFC North again. It's interesting that you bring up Baltimore, though. People forget how crazy that was last year, what happened with them, where they lost J.K. Dobbins and Marcus Peters in a single practice. And by the end of the year, that team was an absolute mash unit. They were a contender in midseason before the bottom really dropped out. I would have to think, I look at the state of the teams in that division, and I'm with you. I think Baltimore is definitely a top contender. I could see both teams making the playoffs, both Baltimore and Cincinnati making the playoffs, with one of them winning the division. I think it could be either of them. All
right, give me the latest. Mac Jones had one big play down the field, but in the end, the first two series, they were 3 and out against backups for I think it was Carolina. So what's the current state of this unique style of offensive coaching?
Well, we've said this before, right? So they're trying to simplify things. So I think right now they're going through a process of what they think they can do best, right? And I think that's where it's looked kind of ugly at times this year. The problem is the guys that you have doing it aren't guys that have a ton of background coaching the offense, so they've had to work through it too. The plan, I think, for now would be for Matt Patricia to be the primary play caller going into the season. However, I think it's worth noting that Joe Judge is coaching the quarterbacks, and Bill Belichick has always had his quarterbacks coach as his coordinator, whether it was Charlie Weiss, Josh McDaniels, or Bill O'Brien.
Yeah.
And then I think the second piece of this is that Belichick could pull the ripcord himself and become the offensive play caller. And it's one thing I know the Panthers staff noticed during their practices with the Patriots last week is when they went into 2-minute work where you have to react quicker and do things faster. Bill Belichick was the one with the walkie-talkie talking to Mac Jones. And so it wouldn't shock me. I don't know if it'll be as early as week 1, but it wouldn't shock me if at some point Bill Belichick winds up becoming the primary play caller on offense for the Patriots. And what's really interesting about that is he's been backstopping the defense that sort of way the last few years. So if you take him out of that role defensively and it's just Gerard Mayo and Steve Belichick over there, what does that mean for the defense? It's going to be a really, really interesting dynamic to watch.
The the Mitch Trubisky thing, I was saying this earlier, and a little tongue-in-cheek, but it's in Los Angeles. Half our city's not from Los Angeles. We tear it down, we start over, we take big swings. Los Angeles is not a city as beholden to the past as other places. St. Louis, Pittsburgh. You go to a party, people talk about, oh, where'd you go to high school, right? Like, that's the city.
Yep.
And I get that. And Pittsburgh's always been a little slow to move. They were slow to hold Ben accountable in the offseason. They were slow to move off Ben. Now they feel like they're slow to embrace Kenny Pickett, a 4-year college starter who has to beat out Mitch Trubisky. I mean, to me, it's like this isn't a situation where you've got like Alex Smith having a Pro Bowl year and Mahomes behind him. Like we've seen Pickett with a pro offense in college win the ACC in that stadium. What do you think the latest is on it?
So, I think here's the issue facing Mike Tomlin and his staff is, I don't think Kenny Pickett looks like a world beater in practice. And so, if you ask the players in the locker room, I think that they would probably tell you, Mitch has had a really good camp and Mitch has looked good in practice.
Yeah.
And, I think that makes Mitch Trubisky a little bit more sellable to a locker room that's full of guys like TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick, guys who are only concerned about winning right now. The thing is, Kenny Pickett's reputation coming out of Pitt was that he was a gamer. He was a guy when the lights went on, he showed up and he was the guy. And I think we're seeing that dynamic coming to life now, where he's had his ups and downs in practice, where maybe he won't wow you, Monday through Thursday, but then he gets to the weekend and to the game, and all of a sudden it's a different type of player. So I think that's the dilemma for Mike Tomlin and his staff right now. And in a lot of ways, I don't think it's that unlike what New England faced with Mac Jones last year, where when you look at Mac Jones, one of the best things about him was how pro-ready he was. Well, look at Kenny Pickett's background. The guy who's the Steelers offensive coordinator, a lot of people haven't noticed this. The guy who was the Steelers offensive coordinator recruited Kenny Pickett to Pitt. And so he's running the Matt Canada's offense at Pitt the first couple of years he was there. And then he ran Mark Whipple's offense there the next 3 years, which is an NFL offense. So this guy's ready as they come. He's a gamer. I think the biggest question here is, based on how practice has gone the last 5 years, about 5 weeks, and then how the games have gone, can you sell Kenny Pickett to a veteran locker room? I think that's sort of where the Steelers are and what they're going through right now.
Hey, 1 minute, only a minute left. New York Giants, you went to their camp. Can they win 7-8 games?
Nah, I don't think so. I just think this is sort of that's gonna sound terrible. I really think where they are right now though is those guys, Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, came from Buffalo. I think what this is for them here in New York is 2018 in Buffalo. And if you'll remember, 2018 in Buffalo is year 2 for Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane. It's when the Bills took on all kinds of dead money. It's when they offloaded a bunch of Rex Ryan guys from the roster. It's when they brought in new guys and they started building from the ground up. I think if you look at the way that the Giants have handled this offseason, that's where they are right now. I think they found a roster that was pretty broken, and they decided we got to do this methodically. We're not even going to go for that first year bump. We got to build this thing from the ground up. And you look at the way that they've handled free agency with bargain signings, with guys who are program guys, and then you look at what they did in the draft, kind of emphasizing the lines of scrimmage with guys like Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. And I think all the markings are there. This is a turn the page year for the Giants. So I think the hope is not tied to some sort of win total, whether it's 9 games, 8 games, whatever. I think it's more, do we look better in December than we do in January? And so I think they're going to be relying on a lot of young guys. And again, I think they understand that there are going to be some bumps this year.
All right, Monday morning quarterback. He's just fantastic. All sorts of gems today by Albert Breer. Sorry, J-Mac, about that Giants reality check there for you, buddy.
Am I going against J-Mac on that one?
He's trying to sell me on winning the division.
You taking the over, J-Mac? You taking the over?
Yeah, Albert Breer. No, listen. I think they can go 7-10. I think my takeaway on the Giants is I think Daboll is going to get the most you can possibly get out of them, but I think Washington Wentz is better than Taylor Heineke. I think Philadelphia is better in the offseason. So I think the division is better than last year.
Yeah.
So that and I think Philadelphia. Listen. I don't feel great about anybody. Nick Sirianni, to me, is shockingly effective. But, Jalen Hurts is completing 59% of his throws. So it's not like I love my division winner pick.
I like to buy teams that were injured a lot the previous year because we didn't see them at their best
Baltimore.
with all their healthy guys. Listen, Carolina started 3-0 last year. McCaffrey gets hurt. Everybody else hurt. They get decimated.
All right. Something to think
Buy
about.
low, baby.
Colin right, Colin wrong. Hour 2 next. Live in LA. It's the Herd. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.